Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual podcast partner, Bob Duff, and this is the HockeyDebates.com podcast. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. Even in the midst of a pandemic, we have found enough to talk about, and we're going to have plenty to talk about today because our special guest is the gifted columnist for NHL.com, Nick Cotsonika, who has a long history covered in the league, and he is, of course, national columnist and knows a little bit about every team and a lot about some of them.
That's too kind.
And we're going to, kind of talk. Oh, we lost me there, but I'm back. So we're all pretty confident we're going to, see a resumption of play. We just don't know when it's going to be. And Nick, just from, knowing the league, what is your sense for what hockey will look like? We have never seen, having it cut off quite like this and then everybody go away, players unable to condition the way they normally would, and we're going to start back up and try to play again. What are we going to see when we do see hockey?
Chaos in my mind. I mean, I look back a year ago when things were normal, and we had one of the greatest regular season teams of all time get swept in the first round. Like, that's how unpredictable the playoffs were in normal times. Now we're going to have, a massive layoff. We're going to have guys coming from all over the world in different, states, physical states. I don't know how sharp guys are going to be. I don't know how sharp goalies are going to be. I have no idea how quickly they're going to gel again. I know, teams will get guys healthy again, but, we'll see where everybody's at. And then you throw in the mix best of 5 series, which makes things even more random. So I think it's going to be totally unpredictable. I'm hoping that there'll be a lot of offense because teams won't be in, regular season machine-like form defensively, and it'll be entertaining because you're not going to know what to expect.
Yeah, I'm expecting to see 1980s style hockey where we'll see some defensive mistakes, which will, give the offensive stars a chance to, get to the net and find more open space than they normally have.
Yeah, and goalies are a big issue for me. Now, maybe they'll have enough time to get their games back, but I don't know. I mean, to me, if there's any position in the game that would be difficult to replicate while you're in quarantine, it would be a goalie, right? You can do some drills, you can do some hand-eye stuff, but there's nothing like being on the ice and taking shots and refining your positioning like you do during a season. And now you took all this time off. You're going to come back and be in tip-top shape. I don't know. And maybe some guys will respond quicker than others. I have no idea how to guess that. And I'm kind of hoping they'll be a little rusty because we'll see some more goals, like you said.
How's the coaching? I haven't seen a whole lot of talk about how the coaching is going to work. Are we going to see the usual plethora of coaches behind the bench, with the video guy running back and forth with replays and things like that? Or are they going to kind of monitor that and keep limits on that?
It's a good question. There's a lot of things that they have to work out just about how they're going to run things. But I'm sure that they're going to try to, coaches are going to try to use everything at their disposal. They're going to try to do, have all the structure they want. But I do think, just because of what we just talked about, that, no matter how many iPads you have or eraser boards or whatever tricks you try to pull, I think it's going to be tough for everybody to be in sync like they do during a normal season. And I think emotion is going to be huge. Who's motivated to play and get through all these rounds? Who has that us against the world mentality? Who comes together? Because if you're going to win, especially if you're going to come through the qualifying rounds and you're going to win the Stanley Cup, you're going to have to want it, I think, more than ever before. You're going to have to come into arenas where there's no fans, no energy, and play like that. So I think emotional coaching is going to be really important. So a guy like Tortorella, I think, gives Columbus an advantage, right? So I think that's going to be a very interesting dynamic to watch.
Well, Nick, that feeds right into my next question for you. As I started to think about what may happen, I saw a team that probably lost a lot as a result of the pandemic, and that's the Minnesota Wild. They had just sort of discovered who they really were under Dean Evison. We're playing very well, and now we don't know quite where they'll be. And I thought a big winner was probably the Columbus Blue Jackets because they were so beat up. And now they're going to have everybody that they want to get back, including most importantly, Seth Jones. And as you mentioned, they've got a guy who I think is perfect for this situation because he's a guy that, he's not as much X's and O's as he is as a motivator. And there'll be a lot of motivation that would be used in this. But who are the teams that you think have either won or lost because of what has occurred here?
Well, I do think Columbus is a really interesting team to watch, and that's a series that I'm really going to keep an eye on. I guess it's easy to sort of pick an upset when they did it last year, but you look at Toronto and Tampa aren't that different, in style. So they've got that going for them. They've already done it once. They've got some confidence here. They only have to win 3 games, not 4. They've got all their guys back healthy. I mean, they were really banged up when they went into the pause. And they've got all those guys healthy again. And, I really like Columbus's chances against Toronto. I mean, other teams that I think benefited, I think Nashville needed a reset. I think just the fact that teams like Chicago and Montreal are involved is obviously a huge thing. They're in it. They've got to win 3 games out of 5 to advance. If you're Montreal, everybody said you've got Carey Price. So I think that the teams on the fringe certainly have a huge advantage with this format.
And there was a lot of talk from the naysayers about, they should put an asterisk next to whoever wins the cup because it isn't a real playoff season. But I think it's the opposite. I think whoever wins this cup, maybe you should give them a check mark for being the most impressive cup champion of all time. And if you come out of that first qualifying round and you win the cup, you're going to have to win 19 games to win the Stanley Cup. No one's ever had to do that before. So somebody could make history here.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I feel like working for the NHL that I'm, I'm pumping up the company by saying that. But I said it's not an asterisk; it's an exclamation point for what you just said. I mean, not only you'd have to win a best of 5, right? If you're coming out of that qualifying round, you're going to have to play in empty arenas. I can't emphasize that enough. Like the part of playoff hockey is the energy. If you're at home, you're feeding off the crowd. If you're the road team, you're feeding off being the villain. That's so much a part of playoff hockey. And on top of that, they're going to be living in a bubble. Like this isn't going to be normal situation. They're basically going to be on the road the entire time. After coming off this layoff and going through camp and going through voluntary workouts, like there are so many things here on and off the ice that are stacked against you as a player. And it would be real easy to just be like, I don't really want to go through this, or when things aren't good to maybe not believe. Like, I think if you're the team that survives this tournament and survives all those factors, I think you're really definitely a worthy Stanley Cup champion. And arguably, it could be the most difficult tournament ever staged.
Nick, you brought up the no fans, although I've been hearing some rumbling that now some folks are trying to talk about, let's say no fans until we get to the final and then see where we're at. You hear that. And, I don't know whether Gary Bettman feels the same way, but you certainly hear that. But I wonder how you feel about, I've heard it suggested because there will be no fans that that will favor the most talented teams. That, sometimes we have teams that maybe aren't quite, talented enough to win it all, but they build on momentum. They get supercharged, by their fan bases. Do you see that this could be a tournament where it's all going to be about the talent, since you're not going to get that big lift that you get sometimes from your fan base?
I don't know. Like, I really don't. Like, I don't know where we'll be with fans in the rink. I'm operating under the assumption that there won't be, and I'm hoping it changes like everybody else. But I think, like, it's impossible to know. Like, maybe these talented teams have tried to put on a show for their home crowd, and now that there won't be that temptation anymore. I think the bigger factor for skill is just going to be, teams not being in midseason form, and then maybe the structure being a little loose, and maybe there being more mistakes. I think that'll be a bigger factor than whether there'll be people in the crowd. So that would be my guess. But at this point, it's just a guess, honestly, because we've never seen anything like this before.
We always hear at playoff time, it's the teams that are the toughest to play against that win and succeed in the playoffs. But this is such an X factor, with this virus floating around. Kevin and I have talked about this. Is Brad Marchand still going to be Brad Marchand on the ice? He certainly isn't going to be licking anybody, but and the guys who are the agitators who get under other guys' skins, are they going to be able to do what they normally do, or is that going to be an element of the game that might not be as prevalent?
It's still hockey, right? And maybe guys are going to be in an ordinary mood. I mean, if you're sitting in your hotel room and all you can have is room service and you can't go home and you can't see your kids and it's the same every day and I got to go to the rink, I might be in a bad mood. I mean, maybe we'll see more scrums. I don't know. But I think the teams that can find that emotion and find that intensity are going to be the teams that are more likely to come out of this. Like, I think you have to try to approach this as, get in that hockey mode as normal as possible and try to find that emotion and try to find that edge. And of course, execute with your skill as well. But that's going to be, I think, a huge challenge. This is going to be an alien environment. I mean, it's just, can you imagine? Like, we go to preseason games and there's a smattering of people in the crowd and it feels dead, right? Now you're going to go to a Stanley Cup playoff game and it's going to be empty, right? Like, I don't know, are they going to pipe in music? How are they going to create atmosphere? I think it's going to be a huge mental challenge. Maybe they'll get used to it. Maybe there'll be an adjustment period and they'll get used to it. But I think that's going to be part of the story here is how this evolves and how teams are able to find that emotion you're talking about.
I like your presentation of it being alien. Maybe we can get Dan Craig to put an ice rink in Area 51 and we'll play it out there since this is going to be such a strange situation. Nick, I want to get your take on the Philadelphia Flyers. I don't think any of us had a really, good idea of just how good they really are through the season. I think we just kept thinking, okay, we like where they are. We like how this team is coming together, but we were expecting this next season. So should we believe it? Like, on paper, they're a contender.
Yeah,
they should be able to, be in the hunt for a Stanley Cup. And yet we think, yeah, but they're still a year away, aren't they? So what do we make? Are they a contender or not?
Well, I think they are, especially because the format's so unpredictable, like we talked about. But I'll share a little story with you. So I believe it was the Toronto GM meeting right after the Hall of Fame. And I'm at the Toronto airport flying back to Detroit. And I just ended up next to the gate with Chuck Fletcher. We just struck up a conversation because we had nowhere to go. And we were talking. I asked him about, Alain Vigneault. And he said, by the end of the year, he'll be a Jack Adams candidate. You watch. And you know what? I think he's right. I think he's had a huge effect on that team. I think Carter Hart is an interesting player to watch. Just like I talked about with goalies, like I think he's the real deal. We'll see how he comes out of the break. But yeah, I don't see any reason why Philadelphia couldn't be a contender under normal circumstances, but especially under these circumstances.
Well, a huge question I think we all need to see the answer to with the Flyers is, are they going to let Gritty in the rink?
I think Gritty should. I think he should be a focal point for sure.
Yeah. I guess my final question for you: in this pandemic hockey, we're not sure what it's going to look like. We're not sure when it's going to start. We're not sure how it's going to feel. We're not sure, how it's going to be presented on television.
Mm-hmm.
Can we even guess at who the favorite is in this or not? Should we just ignore it and not have a favorite, or do you have one?
Well, it's funny. I've gone round and round in that, mostly because I have lots of time to overthink even more than usual. And, kind of both ways. Like I think it's going to be extremely unpredictable, but I don't think that doesn't mean there isn't a favorite, right? I kind of think this is a massive reset. And so, my knee jerk is to go back to who's the best team, right? Like that team should still have the best odds, even if they're, 1 in 10 or whatever. So I still go back to my preseason favorites. Like I like the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? Like I love that team. I think the Boston Bruins, the St. Louis Blues. I think I got to go with the teams that I think in a vacuum are the best because, frankly, this is kind of a vacuum, right? So, again, we'll see what all the X factors are. But if you're asking me for the favorites, I'm just going to go right to who are my best teams entering the season, and I see no reason why those wouldn't still be the favorites now.
Perfect. So we'll leave it on that note. Nick, thanks for joining us. And once play stops or starts again, I hope it doesn't stop again. When it starts again, I hope to have you on, and we'll talk about some real competition. And then we'll have some idea of what it's going to look like.
Sounds great. I'm really looking forward to that. I can tell you that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
That's been Nick Cotsonika, the NHL.com columnist, and Bob, always a good read, always has unique perspective, and writes extremely well. And I really
I think this is such a unique scenario. There's really nothing you can parallel. You try to look for past examples, and I don't know that there is anything you can parallel this to. So to try to kind of find logic to base your reasoning in on why this team could win or why this team won't win is really, you're grasping at straws. You're almost pulling, throwing darts at the board, trying to guess who's going to win. And, I kind of look at, the 04-05 season when we had the whole year shut down because of the lockout. The next year came back and Carolina won. And I don't think anybody at the start of that season was looking at Carolina as a legitimate Stanley Cup champion or a contender. But by the end of the season, there they were. And, they got things rolling in the playoffs. And I think that's what's going to – whoever gets that role going here is going to be the team to watch out for. And then I still think, the teams that are in that first round, even though they got to play more games, just the fact that they're going to be in that playoff environment first, you got to think that gives them an edge going into the second round.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Are you hearing the feedback?
Yeah, I'm getting feedback from you, Kevin.
Yeah. It's not working here.
Oh, I got you good now.
You're good now?
Yeah.
No feedback?
Nope.
Okay, well, I got it. You aren't good.
Yeah, I got a little bit again there now.
Yeah. There's something right there.
How do you pick a winner in this scenario? I don't know. I think if you're a betting person, I think this is the time to play a long shot because it's really anybody's cup right now.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you on that. I think you could draw names out of a hat and do just as good a job of picking winners as if you actually sit down and think a lot of each series just because, this really is going to be like throwing darts.
Do you think the hub city will be relevant at all? Like if they choose let's say they pick Columbus as one of the two hub cities, does that give the Blue Jackets a significant edge when the fact is there's going to be nobody in those seats cheering for them?
I don't think it gives them any edge. Because I can't, the only thing is they get to sleep home a little bit with the family. And is that an advantage or a disadvantage? I don't know.
I mean, the coaches might like this because they're always, look how anxious they are to sequester teams during playoff series. They often take them to hotels and try to get them away from the so-called distractions. Maybe the coaches are looking at this as this is their dream scenario where they basically have these guys' attention for 2 months or whatever it takes to play to win the cup. There are those distractions have probably been eliminated from their lives for the most part.
Yeah. Well, and I think that coaches have for years tried to control the environment, and this is finally they got what they've always wanted. Now, I'm sure the players don't appreciate it, but one thing that we haven't talked about is the fact that from talking to people around the league, it's really split on when everybody wants to start. I think the players want to start late. And I think the league would like to start earlier in July, get in that window where the used to be or supposed to be on. Yeah, I think, Bob, this feedback is becoming too too great here. We might have to cut today short.
All right, we can do that.
Yep. So anyway, we've technical problems. We appreciate you stopping by and listening to whatever gets corrected by next time.
Thanks a lot for joining us, folks. We'll be back on Thursday.